Today I will talk about different keywords that Legends of Runeterra units can possess, and I will separate them into either aggressive or defensive categories. I only recently started playing this game, but I feel like I can explain these better than a pro player could, simply because I don't gloss over a lot of the facts that might be very obvious to a pro player. I recommend you to play the challenges, because not only are the first few challenges a continuation of the basic game tutorial, the later challenges offer a more active playground for you to learn the keywords. Also, each challenge is worth 150 XP, so you can grow your collection faster by doing them. Let's talk about different spell types first, and then we can talk about the unit keywords. In Legends of Runeterra, a spell can be either slow, fast, or a burst spell. And the difference is whether the enemy can react to these and the stage in which you can cast these spells. The way I would explain a slow spell, the way you want to think about them, is they are sort of like a creature or a unit. You cannot cast a slow spell if you are already in combat. What combat means in Legends of Runeterra is that there are enemies in the midfield, aka the enemy has the attack token, you already need to block, or you already place down attacking creatures and you press the attack button. You cannot cast a slow spell or summon creatures then. Also, slow spells can be counteracted with, So for instance, if I were to cast my Avalanche, the enemy can react by buffing his creature's health so they don't die. I want to explain Burst next instead of Fast next, because Burst is a much better spell type than Slow, but this is why they are generally weaker in their effect. Burst cards can be cast even if you are in combat, and indeed, this is when you want to cast these spells especially, because you catch your enemy off guard and you can win some favorable trades with them. So you can cast it in combat, but also the enemy doesn't get to react to them. It just happens and then creatures attack. Fast spells are a combination of slow spells and burst spells. They have the slow spell attribute in that enemies can actually react to them. I didn't know this at first. So if I were to cast Glimpse Beyond, the enemy could react by, killing my own creature, dealing 1 damage to it, for instance. And this eats the card, it doesn't take it, I don't draw 2. However, fast spells also have the attribute of burst spells in the way that they can be cast in combat. There is also a sort of hidden 4th type spell that is not really its own type, which is called a skill spell. So some units have a battle cry effect from Hearthstone that we just call play. When you play a unit, it does something. And some of these cards, for instance, this card that has a deal 1 effect, and you have this card in your starting decks, you play the card and it summons this skill spell. Now don't be confused, because enemies can absolutely and will counter these cards if they can. There's a bug in the game which sometimes, you see, it shows burst here. But if I click on it again, now it says fast. And then some of these cards show slow. These cards can absolutely be countered, and the enemy has time to counter these. Let's go over the creature keywords. Keywords are essentially attributes that units can have. And most of the times they have these already when you summon them. For instance, Braum will have Challenger and Regeneration when you summon him. But some cards, some spells can give these keywords, or some creature battle cries can give these keywords to other allies. Kind of a similar keyword to play is a round start. Play actually triggers right when you summon a creature, whereas round start only triggers the next round. So you would have to keep a creature alive for its round start ability to trigger, and this is why I don't really like them, because you ideally don't want to attack or block with a creature like this, because then you increase the chance of it dying, and then the round start ability just simply doesn't trigger because it's dead. But anyways, let's go over the most common keywords that you will find in Legends of Runeterra. And first of all, I want to talk about some defensive keywords first. Tough, Regeneration, and Barrier. Tough is really cool because it reduces damage taken by 1. And you might say that this is similar to this Plucky PORO having 1 attack and then 2 health, right? It's actually much better because a lot of the cards in this game deal 1 damage. So Plucky PORO would actually take 0 damage and still have the Tough keyword. Tough does not disappear. It doesn't last for 1 round, it's essentially until the creature dies. Now, what only lasts for 1 round though is Barrier, which is almost exactly the same as Hearthstone's Divine Shield, except as I said, it only lasts for 1 round. So, if you were to summon Lux, either defending or attacking with it, you should really defend or attack with it because next turn its Barrier is going to disappear anyways. Barrier takes a Barrier can defend you, simply just from 1 damage or 1 million damage. Regeneration you will find with Garen and Braum in the Demacia, Freljord deck that you have in the beginning. It's really simple to understand because at the end of the turn it regens back to its full health. Even if you buff the creature, I don't know, I gave Garen +3/+3, at the end of the turn he would return back to 8 health in that case, right? The most common aggressive keywords, on the other hand, such as Overwhelm, Fearsome, and Elusive, they only trigger or they only have an effect if you are attacking. So these don't trigger when you are defending. Okay? And Overwhelm is essentially pierce damage from other card games, where if I were to attack with my 6 attack Darius against a 1 health opponent, it would kill the 1 health opponent and then the enemy Nexus would take 5. I used to make the mistake of trying to block very high attack enemies with, I don't know, my 1/1 spiders, but it doesn't really do much because it would still deal 9 damage to my Nexus, and it's often better to just keep your 1/1s around. Fearsome, again another aggressive keyword, means that if you are attacking, the enemy cannot block with units that have less than 3 attack. So you can use Precious Pet your first turn, and if they were to summon a 2/2 or a 1/1 or whatever, they cannot block this. You can actually deal Nexus damage in turn 1 with that. I used to think Elusive was Stealth from Hearthstone. I could not have been more wrong. Whereas Stealth is a very actually defensive attribute, Elusive means that with this creature you can attack, again only triggers when you're attacking, you can attack with this creature and it cannot be blocked by other units. The only units that can defend or block against an elusive unit are other elusive units. And again, this is kind of like, in some scenarios, a better Fearsome, because not even, free attack or higher attack units can block this Daring Poro, unless they have elusive. So we talked about these aggressive keywords, and there are also some hidden keywords that don't have their own icon, which deal Nexus damage. Some cards deal Nexus damage when you summon them, some cards deal Nexus damage when you strike with them. And Some cards get a benefit if the Nexus has X or less health. For instance, Darius only levels up if the Nexus has 10 or less health. Connected to this, Teemo can summon mushrooms that attach themselves to enemy cards in the enemy's deck, and similarly to the Hearthstone, I don't know, Iron Juggernaut or something like that, when the enemy draws these cards, they deal damage to the enemy Nexus. Let's talk about Challenger and Vulnerable next. This is one of my favorite keywords, but it's a little bit more difficult to understand than the other ones. Challenger only activates if you are attacking. Again. So if I play my Braum, I'm attacking. Before I press the attack button, I can drag an enemy to block against my Braum, and then the enemy doesn't get to change that. This is really good because this counters elusive units, overwhelm units, and fearsome units. Because remember, those only activate if the enemy is attacking. Somewhat similar to Challenger is something called Vulnerable. Your creatures can add this negative attribute to the enemy creatures, and a vulnerable creature can be dragged around. Like if you have Challenger. It's not strictly worse than Challenger, because remember, if you have a Challenger unit, you can only drag enemies to the Challenger unit, not to any of the other units. But with Vulnerable, you can actually drag an enemy anywhere you want, even if your unit doesn't have Challenger itself. So let's talk about Stun, Frostbite, and Recall, which are mostly defensive keywords. You can use Frostbite as a way to generate value, actually. But when it comes to Stun, you will probably have an Arachnoid Sentry in your starting decks. If you cast Stun before combat, the enemy cannot drag that unit to attack or to block. If you are already in combat and you use, I don't know, a spell that is a fast spell to stun an enemy, if you were to stun a blocking enemy, they actually return back to non-attacking, non-blocking side of the field. But don't make the same mistake as I did. What happens in this game is if you stun or recall an enemy unit that is already blocking, you don't get to then attack the Nexus. Because if you remove an enemy, there still remains sort of like a remnant that blocks for them. And, nothing happens. You don't attack the Nexus. Frostbite you can use to reduce an enemy's attack to 0. And this mostly helps with favorable trades rather than really, defending. If you have to use Frostbite to survive, dying, you're probably already playing from behind anyways. Some spells like Winter's Breath worked well together with the Frostbite because they remove enemies with 0 power. You can also use this against Broms, which is really cool. Recall is kind of similar to Stun, except if you are already attacking, Recall doesn't simply put the creature back to a non-attacking position or non-blocking position. Recall puts the card or unit back to the enemy's hand. And they have to, resummon them, repay the mana cost. Again, similarly to Stun, if you recall an enemy that is already blocking, you will not get to attack the Nexus after that, because there remains a remnant of that unit on the field. Recall you will see with Yasuo decks. Really, really annoying. Let's talk about Last Breath. Some spells or some units that kill, obliterate, and capture. So Last Breath is the same as Hearthstone's Death Rattle. When you kill a creature, it triggers an ability. It's sort of like a reverse play or battle cry, right? What's important to note about killing versus obliterating? If you were to kill an enemy, you actually trigger its Death Rattle, or, you know, in this game, Last Breath attribute. However, if your spell or creature has the obliterate keyword, it actually kills the creature, but obliterate is a little bit better than killing because it doesn't trigger Last Breath. Capture is similar to Hearthstone's, I guess, Carnivorous Cube in a way, because you can, some cards work with only allies, some cards work with enemies as well. You can remove one creature from the game. I'm not sure if it triggers obliterate or just simply a kill effect. I guess it's only a kill effect. You can remove a creature from the game, and when the capturing creature dies, it returns that captured creature to the field. Some of these cards can be used as not really tempo, because you have to sort of wait for your creature to die to get a little bit more tempo. But you can use them as value cards. For instance, Bayou Branch, or Bayou Branch, one of your creature eats another one, gains its stats, and then when that creature dies, it resummons that creature. So this is really good to use with, you know, a large creature. You eat the large creature, and then you can still resummon it. But it takes time, so it's not amazing for tempo. Some of the Bilgewater cards actually have some really unique effects, and most of them are only found in Bilgewater. Plunder is a keyword that can be found with Bilgewater and Freljord cards, simply because they are, I guess, you know, Vikings. Let's trigger all regions. You can see some Freljord cards have this. Plunder triggers if you dealt Nexus damage. Now, if you summon a Plunder creature and then you deal Nexus damage by, I don't know, attacking or dealing whatever else damage, it does not trigger the Plunder. Plunder is actually a battle cry. This is why I don't really like it, because if you don't have specific cards that deal Nexus damage, the only way to trigger Plunder is to first attack with your... you have to have the attack token for one. You have to actually sometimes kill the blockers, and then another creature has to deal Nexus damage, and then you summon the plundering unit, which is really, really bad, because you know, you could have attacked with this card, you could have blocked with this card, but you didn't. Some cards have some amazing plunder potential, like Warning Shot is... It seems really bad because it eats a card to only deal 1 damage to the Nexus, but it's a burst, meaning you can cast it even before combat, and then you can summon your creatures for combat. And you can do, you can actually cast this spell if you are blocking that turn and still deal Nexus damage, and then trigger Plunder. Toss and Deep are exclusive to Bilgewater. What Toss does is simply remove cards from the bottom of your deck, which are non-champions. Now, this is really bad, but the reason why Toss is in the game is because of Deep cards like Nautilus. And Deep gives creatures +3/+3 if you have 15 or less cards in your deck. Remember, you have 40 cards in your deck, you draw 4 cards +1 in your first turn, so you have to remove 20 cards, you have to toss 20 cards for Deep to take its effect. A lot of the cards that have Deep are Sea Monsters, and Sea Monster is a semi-attribute, because it's not, you know, a real attribute, but if you click on a card, it actually says Sea Monster up here. I didn't realize this at first. And it's worth noting that Sea Monsters are not every Bilgewater card. For instance, the 1 and 2 mana cards are not Sea Monsters, even though they look like Sea Monsters, like the Boxtopus and some other sea creatures are not sea monsters. Sea monsters are mid to expensive cards. Nab also helps deep decks because it's essentially steal from Hearthstone, you know, the rogue mechanic, except you steal from the enemy's deck and only the bottom of the deck and only non-champions. So it's kind of like a reverse toss. It helps you because if you are already deep in your deck and you're running out of cards, you can use Nab to get some extra cards. And similarly to Rogue in Hearthstone, some cards actually reduce these nabbed cards cost by, you know, an X amount. So, some Ionia cards and some Shadow Isle cards have Ephemeral. And just in case my accent is as thick as an oatmeal, this is how it's written. Ephemeral. What Ephemeral is similar to some Warlock cards in Hearthstone, where at the end of the turn the unit dies. Now, Ephemeral units also die if they strike. Striking is different from attacking, because in this game, if a card says attacking, it means that you only gain its effect if you are attacking and not blocking. Whereas strike means, you know, attack with the creature or block with the creature. So ephemeral units die if they strike or, you know, they block strike or they attack strike. Ephemeral units can be sacrificed with some cards, so that means you cannot attack with them, obviously, which is a shame. Similarly to Ephemeral, you have the keyword Fleeting, except this is for cards in your hand. So it's not very similar to Ephemeral. Fleeting is essentially the Echo keyword in Hearthstone, where cards in your hand disappear after your turn. So fleeting cards are mostly, you know, in combo decks. You have to cast them as you get them. Otherwise, they obviously just disappear. Let's talk about the more advanced or not as popular keywords, such as Enlightened. If I could. Enlightened. Nice English, bro. Enlightened cards do something if you are already at 10 mana. So for instance, Feral Mystic is a 2 mana 2/2 that gets +4/+4 when you have 10 mana. I would summon this unit at 2 mana if you have nothing else to play. It's much better than just waiting until 10. If you have 10 mana, the best way to use this card effectively, I've done this. I actually cast or summoned this card and an 8/8. So for 10 mana, I had an 8/8 and then this 6/6, which is a massive tempo swing. Similarly to Hearthstone, you can increase your empty mana crystals. You know, Hearthstone has druid cards. Here you have cards such as the Catalyst of Aeons. And it works the exact same way. If you cast Catalyst of Aeons at 5 mana, the next turn you would have 7 mana. And some other cards that have this effect, Wolf Rider and Voices of the Old Ones, essentially. Now, another hidden attribute is discard. Some cards only work if you discard another card, such as Get Excited. Other cards only work if you discard those. Well, not only work, but they do something if you discarded them. For instance, you shouldn't summon Flame Chompers at 2 mana. You should try to discard it if you can, because otherwise it's obviously dog shit. In Hearthstone, this is, I guess, similar to Warlock, except much better, because in Hearthstone, you generally cannot pick which cards you discard. It's random. In this game, you can actually pick which cards you discard from your hand. Much better. Discard mechanics are mostly found in Piltover and Zon and Noxus cards. Another favorite of mine is Quick Attack. It's an aggressive keyword that only triggers if you are attacking, but rather than being a hyper aggressive keyword, it's mostly for value trades, where if I were to attack with my Lucian against a 3/3, I would actually strike the 3/3 before it could strike me. It would die and my Lucian would survive. Now, if I were to attack something that has 4 health, I don't kill it, the enemy can still attack back. Double attack is not really a double attack in this game. The only card that has double attack right now is this card. Double attack is essentially one quick attack followed by one normal attack. So the second time this card attacks, it would also take damage from the enemy creature. In a similar vein to double attack, let's talk about Fury. In this game, most cards that have Fury are dragons. It's similar to some, cards from Hearthstone, but also Pokemon, where if you kill something, it does something. And in this case, Fury just gives 1+1 to this card if it kills something. Two keywords exclusive to different regions are Daybreak and Nightfall. So I guess, I don't know why this card has Daybreak, but Daybreak exclusive to Targon essentially means that this card has to be the first card that you summoned for the Daybreak to do something. On the other hand, Nightfall is not really the opposite. Nightfall creature doesn't have to be the last creature that you summon, but similarly to combo in Rogue decks in Hearthstone, you have to summon another spell or creature before a Nightfall creature or spell for it to take its Nightfall effect. It goes without saying that Daybreak is generally better at the early game, where you only have one creature or spell to summon anyways, whereas Nightfall becomes better the later the game, because you have more mana, you can cast more things, etc, etc. Another interesting keyword is Attune. This is only found with Bilgewater cards, these sort of sea creature cards. All Attune does is when you summon a creature, it gives you or refills one spell mana. So for instance, I could turn 1 summon my Shell Shocker, and then I could save it. I have 1 spell mana, right? I could save it by giving it +2 health against another creature, and then I still have a creature left, for instance. Invoke is essentially Hearthstone's Discover mechanic, except Invoke right now can only create cards from a Celestial card pool. But it's the same as Hearthstone's Discover mechanic, where you pick from one card. You pick one card from 3 possible cards, and then you put it in your hand. Spell Shield has a really annoying challenge in this game. What Spell Shield is, again, I used to think this was similar to Hearthstone's cannot be targeted, but it's not. Spell Shield is a Divine Shield or barrier on a creature that only negates one enemy spell. So if you cast a card that kills all creatures on the field, you can actually kill your Aurelion Soul, because it only counteracts enemy spells. After they blocked one enemy spell, the Spell Shield disappears. One card that is again another aggressive, one keyword that is again another aggressive keyword is Support. Now don't be fooled by the name. This only triggers when you are attacking, and the way Support works is it only works, as you can see on the image. You attack with a support card, and if you place a creature on the right, not the left, on the right of the support card, it does something. So for instance, this Noxus card, Legion Drummer, would give the creature on the right quick attack. But again, only if you are attacking, not when you are blocking. Let's talk about Rally and Scout. So you have the attack token every second turn in this game, then you have, you know, just blocking chance. A blocking chance. With Rally, such as Tiana Crownguard can give you Rally, you gain the attack token. This doesn't mean that you steal the attack token from the enemy if they have the attack token. What this means is you can also attack. So the way the game works is every time you summon, you know, a slow spell, fast spell, or a creature or unit, the enemy can react. Now, unfortunately, if you summon Tiana Crownguard, the enemy can still attack right after that. Right? And then you block. But then after that, you have another attack token. So essentially, in one turn, both the enemy and you can attack if you so desire. Scouts are special units that are sort of a poor man's rally, in the sense that if you have some units, some of them are scouts, some of them are not. If you only attack with your scouts, you can attack again. It's almost like you gain an attack token after the scouts have attacked. Now, scouts are only really good if either the enemy has no blockers, or the scout that attacked can survive the blocking, and then they can double attack, right? Don't confuse this with double attack, because as we said, double attack is a quick attack and a normal attack in the same attack phase, whereas scout can only attack in different phases in a way. So you attack with your scout first, with your scouts first, and then you attack with all of your units, is the way you want to use these cards. One keyword that I could never fucking spell for the life of me is Allegiance. You will not really see this at first in the game. Allegiance does something when the top card in your deck is the same as the Allegiance creature. So I have to have my top card be a Noxus card for this card to get, you know, 1/1 and Overwhelm. It's hard to trigger these. If you just have a normal deck that has a 50-50 ratio of, you know, one region and another region, it's obviously just a, you know, up to luck. It's really bad to get Allegiance creatures then. But some cards, like Draven's Biggest Fan, puts Draven at the top of your deck. Therefore, you can make sure that a Noxus card is on the top of your deck, and Noxus Allegiance units, like the Basilisk Rider, can be 100% triggered. Finally, let's talk about landmarks before finishing up the video. Landmarks are special units that you summon as a normal unit and they take up a unit slot. However, they don't have attack and they don't have a health, which means they cannot be killed by normal means. The only way to remove landmark units is by using special spells, or maybe in the future special creature battle cries that can remove landmark units specifically. I would really hate this card, because I imagine that in ranked play you have to carry a couple of landmark removing cards just to counter these in case the enemy has them. However, there's an upside in that landmark removing spells have an alternative use. So even if the enemy doesn't have a landmark in play, I can use these spells to do something else, such as shuffle a unit back to its deck. So with that, I think I've explained every keyword and every spell type. I hope you keep watching, and I hope you keep playing, because this game doesn't really have many people to play against. So, thank you and bye.